I was trying to find ways that I could discuss this game, and I find that in previous takes, I would keep going out of order. I would end up ranting about one dungeon, and then jump to another dungeon to rant for about 5 minutes on that. And I'm gonna try to be a little more orderly this time in this take, because I don't want to keep going in so many circles, but that's just what this game does to you. Did to me. Alundra is popularly known as the PlayStation's Zelda clone. I've never played a Zelda game. I can't confirm that, but I've watched some gameplay videos after watching this, and I can say, yeah, they're similar in a lot of ways. They really are. The story, though, is where Alundra shines the absolute brightest. It is one of the best, and admittedly one of the darkest stories I've ever played. And it is an experience that is going to be sticking with me for a very long time to come. It is a very restricting type of game. The whole gameplay world is an islandish, so as to speak. You start the game on a ship. The ship goes through a wreck. You wake up on an island. There's only one town in the entire game map. Only one town. And you're going to be living in this town. You're going to be talking to all of the NPCs. You're going to get to know all of them. You're going to learn their names. And for me, that is a very big deal. Learning people's names outside of, like, playable characters in a video game is a big deal. Because if I remember your name, that means your character was pretty important. Your character made a lasting impression. And normally in video games, I usually only remember the names of major villains, party playable characters, and all that other stuff. But I don't remember every single other person. I'd have to look them up. In Alundra, I remember most of the townsfolk's names, and that's crazy because I don't remember names very good. This village ended up feeling like a second home. I would constantly come back after every dungeon and talk to all of the people, and the writers for the writing team for this game definitely took a couple liberties here and there. There's a lot of jokes here and there with some of these characters, but for the most part, this story is fantastic, and a lot of it is told by talking to people. Much like how I mentioned with Grandia and a bunch of other RPGs where they would do something uncommon, where you would go back to a town after a couple dungeons, and they'd have new things to say. And so that's what I would want to do, is that after every little piece of the story, I would come back to a town to talk to everybody again, just to learn their stories, just to learn what they had to say, and what they were going through in their lives. And I found that would actually enhance the immersiveness of the gameplay for me, and it's almost a must for Alundra. The character you play as is also named Alundra, and he plays very similarly to all of the Zelda games out there. He's got a sword, he eventually gets bombs, he eventually gets a flail, and each item that you would get throughout the game is used to reach more areas on the map. The whole map is technically accessible to you, but there are a lot of obstacles in the way that you don't have the tools required to pass through. For example, in the first start of the game, you only have a single sword. You don't have any other tools to use. And there are a lot of obstacles, such as thorny bushes or blocks of stone, that your sword cannot break through. So you can't break through those obstacles to pass into new areas of the game world. It's very restricting in this way to help mitigate just going and finding everything all at the same time. Progress is made through gameplay progression. It wants you to do dungeons in a certain order, so you go to certain dungeons and you do that, then you get another tool, so you can use that tool to access another area of the map to find another dungeon, and you go there. And the game world opens up progressively through that type of progression system. There is no experience points technically in a sort of JRPG sort of way. The experience comes from skill, the player's skill. Mostly in terms of combat, you would learn how an enemy moves, and you would adapt to that after you've learned the enemy moveset, after you've learned which weapon or which tool works best for an enemy. You would use that and adapt to basically go through entire waves of enemies without getting hit once. For example, there are rock turtles near the coasts of the island in the south west corner of the map, and these things are very tanky. They can only be attacked when they're facing you, but when they're facing you, they would try to flame breath you, like a flamethrower type of thing, and most attacks would not beat them in one hit. After doing the first dungeon, which is Tarn's Manor, you get access to the mines for your next major dungeon. And in the mines, one of the characters in the game, Jess, who is basically your surrogate father, he finds you knocked out on the beach after the shipwreck, and he nurses you back to health and says you can use his home as you wish and stay as long as you like. This village is pretty small, but this could be a new home for you if you wish. And you see, this character, Jess, he already lost his own son in a terrible accident a couple years ago, and he's been living alone ever since. So his heart warms up to you, and he opens his home up to you and looks after you like you're his own kid to help fill a void in his own heart. And you'll find that there's a lot of characters like that, with holes in their hearts that your character and your actions end up doing, that help fill voids in their lives. You get to learn a lot of things about these people and their stories, which is very fantastic. And again, I'm going off topic. I'm trying not to. But each thing I'm saying is an important aspect of the game, so I had to say it eventually, as you know. So Jazz gives you the first tool after the first dungeon, which is a bomb. You can use bombs to open rockfall, little cracked walls, or rock slides and stuff like that. You can clear paths that way to go and access the mines, the second dungeon in the game. This is also used as a weapon, however. If you use a bomb on one of the rock turtles, it will blow them up in one hit. So once you've learned that you can do this, then you'll never have trouble with rock turtles ever again, because you could just throw a bomb at them and boom, they're done. And you'll eventually learn which weapons to use against which enemies that will give you the maximum amount of stopping power to take them out easier. And as the game progresses, Alundra will get new weapons or upgrades to his older weapons. He starts with a dagger. After a couple dungeons, he'll eventually get access to the sword. The sword has a charge attack, which deals pretty good damage. And then after a while, you'll get access to a bonus dungeon, where you can eventually equip the fairy blade, or the fiend blade. This is an upgrade to the sword. It does a higher charge attack damage, and then near the end of the game, you will upgrade the fiend blade for the hero sword. The hero sword does a lot more damage. And then, of course, you can also get the fifth weapon, which is the legend sword. The legend sword does not have a charge attack. The charge attack for there is no charge attack. The charge attack for the holy sword, the hero sword, that damage, that super high damage that the holy sword would do, is the base damage of the legend sword, basically. That's why it's so powerful. The legend sword doesn't need to charge to hit enemies, because it already hits for the maximum amount of damage for the actual best sword you could get in the game. The legend sword, well, I have to say, is basically the theme around Alundra is death. Death everywhere. Half of the characters that you meet in the village of Anoa, the only village you could go to in the game, half of the characters in this village will die. And since death is such a major focus in the game, it's almost comedically hilarious that in order to get the best weapon in the game, the Legend Sword, you have to die more than 15 to 16 times. Yes, you have to die 15 to 16 times, and you have to reload. You don't want to just click the go to the main menu. You have to click the retry button on the game over screen to immediately quick load your save. And you have to die over 15 times. There's no specific amount of times. Some people have gotten it directly after 15 deaths. Some people had to die 20 times. Some people only 18 times. It's more than 15, but there's no precise number. It seems to be random. But over 15 deaths, and you can go get the Legend Sword pretty early in the game, about halfway through. And it will make all fighting trivial. It is such a powerful weapon that it will take out most bosses in a handful of hits until the final series of bosses in the final dungeon. Then it'll start doing about 3 to 4 points of damage against enemies that have about 100 HP. And HP for Alundra, you can gain HP by collecting things called life vessels. There are about 40, if I remember, there are about 40 of them in the game. Alundra starts with 10 HP, he can end the game with 50 HP. The other collectible in the game is the Gilded Falcon. There are about 50 Gilded Falcons in the game. And these are used for another shop in the game from Merrick. Merrick is the captain of the ship that you were sailing on at the beginning of the game. He survives the crash, and he sells very powerful equipment and a bunch of life vessels as well to you for Gilded Falcons. And by collecting 50 Gilded Falcons, he will give you the final weapon of the game, which is the Crystal Staff. The Crystal Staff and the Legend Sword are the two single best weapons in the game, and they will ultimately trivialize any and all combat. However, unlike the Legend Sword, which you could get a couple dungeons earlier, the Crystal Staff can only be collected right before the final dungeon, so it can only really be used against the final boss of the game, not the other bosses if you had trouble against them, only the final boss. And you basically have to 100% every single dungeon. You had to make sure you collected every missable Gilded Falcon. There's a bunch of missables. Let's talk about that too. Missables. If you want to get all 50 Legend vessels, life vessels, and all 50 Gilded Falcons, you're going to need a guide. You're going to need to know beforehand which dungeons you can only visit one time, because usually in every dungeon there is one life vessel and one Gilded Falcon, usually, not always, but usually, and you'll have to know which dungeon before you get there, which ones are one visit only. Meaning, if you feel like getting these things later, like you want to go grind through all the previous dungeons after collecting some of the best gear so that you've trivialized a lot of these puzzles, so you don't have to worry about taking so much damage from them, which is a very smart thing to do. In one of the later dungeons, one of the final ones that you could go to in the game, you can collect a pair of boots. I forget the name of the boots, but in the volcano dungeon, there are a pair of boots that make you immune to even lava. You can walk on lava without taking damage. You can walk on floors of spikes without taking damage. And that pair of boots can trivialize tons of dungeons, tons of platforming traps and dangers that you would otherwise take a lot of damage from if you were having trouble going through them. So if you've collected this, then you can go back to a bunch of dungeons and collect the Gilded Falcons there without having any trouble. The problem is, there are a bunch of missables. If you've missed it in one dungeon and you try to go back, you find, oh, I can't go back into this place. I should have got it on my first trip. And some of them I remember off the top of my head. All of the dream dungeons, and that's something I have to talk about with the plot. We're gonna get to the plot as well, but for now I'm just gonna say dream dungeons. All of those are one visit only, so you're gonna want to get or find out if each dream dungeon has a gilded falcon. So you're gonna want to look that up first, and if it has one, then you need to get it, because if you miss it, then it's gone. You're not gonna get it unless you reload the save or restart the game. And the mines, that's your first missable in the mines, because after you finish the mines, there's a cave-in and you can't go back in. And then there's Nerud's lair near the midway point of the game. If you go into Nerud's lair and you miss the Gilded Falcon there, then you're probably not going to be able to get that one. So you're going to want to go get those on your first trip before you finish those dungeons. Now let's talk about some of the story. The story is Alundra is known as a releaser. He is capable of visiting the dreams of people, the nightmares of people, and he's able to fight off dream demons and all sorts of stuff and clear the nightmares from a lot of people. And there is some sort of dream demon known as Melzas who is plaguing this island and this village of Inoa, and you have to go in and stop him by visiting the nightmares of the dreams of the people he is plaguing. Because if somebody dies in their nightmare, they die in the waking world as well. So that you don't want that to happen. You learn when you get there that a couple people have already passed from this, and you don't want anybody else to do that. But you'll find that you're only one person. You cannot save everyone. And as the story goes on, the bodies are going to pile up. There's even a grave. There's a graveyard in the world map. And there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's about 9 plots in the graveyard, and throughout the game, all 9 of them are going to be filled with somebody who has passed. About 3 of them are not really people you get to know. They're miners. They die in the mines, and that's a terrible tragedy. The 4th one is Olin, who is one of the miners, but he survives the cave-ins at the mines, and he falls into a nightmare, and Melzas is trying to take him out, and that's one of your earlier dreams dungeons that you go through, and you have to go through that dungeon, but you fail to save him. So Olin dies in his dream. He passes, and he's the 4th character, the 4th grave plot added to the map. And you learn that Olin was the betrothed to Kisha, one of the NPCs of the village, and she's completely heartbroken over that. And so as you talk to her, you'll learn about that. She is the sister of Giles. Giles is one of the clergymen of a cathedral on the island, and this cathedral is completely misguided, as you'll later learn, because they're basically worshipping Melzas, and neither Giles nor the priest man Ronan are villains, so as to say, so much as people who have been taken advantage of. They've been manipulated by this deity, this false deity, into worshipping him. And this false deity has tricked all of the people of Inoa to also worshipping him. Because you see, prior to the beginning of this game, back in the story's lore, there used to be many statues of many gods, and the people of this island, the people of this kingdom, worshipped all of them and all of these old gods. And then the king demanded that all of the statues be destroyed, all of the gods go away. There's no need for any of them anymore. So all of the deities have been smashed, and worship of these deities has also been outlawed. Except for one statue that was in this cathedral in the basement that this priest Ronan has managed to keep secret from the king. And the people of Anoa are happy about that because they like to worship their gods, and they believe that after all of the statues were destroyed, their ability to create things has also been hindered. So nobody in this village has been making things. Nobody has been like creating new ideas, new inventions, and all that stuff. None of that has been happening, which is unfortunate. Instead, they've had the ability to control their dreams, but with this has been, as you learn, a lie. Melzas has been manipulating their dreams, and he's the one hindering their ability to create. Because now that all of these other statues, all these other gods are out of the way, he is the only one that everybody's worshipping, and he's gaining power because of this. So you're sent here to stop him from basically wiping all of these people out. And you do save a couple people, but then you learn that your efforts may have been for naught. A bunch of the dream dungeons that you go through and the people that you save, one of the first people that you do succeed in saving in the dream dungeons is Old Man Wendell. Wendell is the grandfather of this big household of Mead, that's the father, his wife, and then their two kids, Burgess and Fargus, Burgess and Festus. I think they're twins. And Old Man Wendell ends up dying near the end of the game. There's another person that you do end up saving. His name is Bonaire. And he ends up dying near the end of the game as well. Basically, every character that you saved in the Dream Dungeons up to a certain point will die. Some of your closest allies will pass. Jess dies. And Jess will die late in the game, after you have grown attached to him. The way the story composes itself is it knows when to take somebody from you. It knows who to take and when to take them. You will get close to these characters, especially if you talk to them after every dungeon and before going to the next dungeon. If you talk to all of them and you get to know them and you learn their personalities, because a lot of these guys do have their own unique quirks about them that separate themselves from others. For example, Burgess is a very adventurous kid, and his brother is a little bit of a shy sport. Ludus is a bit of an outspoken man who is very, very much part of the faith, but he eventually starts to lose his faith as more people perish. There's a man named Beaumont. I keep forgetting his name. He's the mayor of the town, and he initially is very close to the cathedral and all of that stuff, but then he starts to get his faith shaken, and at first he starts to blame Alundra. A lot of the villagers start to blame him, because that's what the Ronan, the guy in the cathedral, is saying. He's saying blame him, he's the cause for all this stuff that's happening. But in reality, it's Melzas who's causing all this, as we know, but half the villagers start to turn against him, and then they eventually learn that, oh, it's Melzas who's causing all of these problems. So it is pretty good in that area. But a lot of the characters who warm up to you early, they pass. They die. There's one dude who lives throughout the entire game, though, and he eventually becomes your best bro. He is the best bro of this game. He is the MVP. His name is Septimus. And you'll meet him at the very beginning of the game, and he is great bro to have for this, and there is some weak writing, though, I will admit. There is some weak writing with the character of Maya. She shows up near the halfway point of the game, and you'll learn that she has the same powers that Alundra has. She is also capable of visiting people's dreams. And, at first, she's pretty mean and rude to Alundra, but then, after doing her dream dungeon, she's suddenly smitten with him. And she's suddenly in love with him, and I didn't really buy that, but it's whatever. A couple weak points of the story does not detract it from how good of an overall adventure, of an overall story it actually is. We could talk about some of the dungeons. I don't want to talk about all of them. We could talk about some of them. There will be obstacle courses where you will have to memorize platform placement before you even begin it. Because a lot of the platforms might be moving platforms, or they might also be moving but also temporary platforms, as in they might stop moving after a single point. So you're going to have to time when you're going to jump so that you can reach certain spots at certain times. Sometimes there's lever puzzles and moving platform puzzles. How do I explain this? This is so complex. Let's do it in writing. Let's write it out. Okay, so we have here a lever. There's your lever. This is the big room. This whole square is the room. You are standing right here. There is a platform here. It's not moving. There is a platform here. It's also not moving. There may be another lever here, but it's on its own little island. And there are spikes all over the floor. All over. And here's the door right here. And here's the little pathway. This is like a little pathway, right? So you can walk over to this place here, and this is a big cliff. You can't jump up here to get up to here. You have to go from here to get to here, right? So you can walk over here. You may have to set a bomb down here. Now, when you set a bomb down, the bomb will take about 3 to 4 seconds before it explodes. When the lever activates, it will move these two platforms one time in a full rotation, and it will stop at a certain point. But if it's hit again, then it'll move them again for another full rotation. So what you have to do is hit it for the first time, jump on it, and then while this platform is moving this way, you have to toss a bomb down here so that it blows up again, because now this one's over here and this one's over here. You need to jump at the midway point to get here, in order to get here, in order to get over here. So you may have to go from here, as up here. Alright. Let me redo that in my head. Alright. You go here, bomb. Get onto here. The bomb blows up and it moves back over here. This, you have to jump over here to get here, to do that, to blow that up, to move that, to move the platform up. And then you have to jump back over here, throw a bomb, jump back over here, it goes over here, you can go out. Do you see how complicated that can get be just by talking about it? Now imagine looking at that in an actual dungeon and trying to figure that out on your own. Now imagine there's dozens and dozens of rooms with puzzles like this, with all of these dangerous spikes, or maybe there's little moving balls of spikes, there's a whole moving little spike thing that moves with the moving platform, so sometimes they might intersect, and if you stand on the platform, you get hit by the spikes, you'll fall off, and you'll fall into the spikes, and you have to run back over here to try again, and you'll be taking a bunch of damage if you get hit by this moving ball of spikes, and all this. There are a lot of rooms like this scattered throughout the map, and this is where the challenge of Alundra is going to hit you. The challenge of Alundra is mostly in its puzzles. It's not in the fighting of the enemies. My opinion, because some people may have trouble with the enemies and they might find these puzzles to be completely trivial. I found these puzzles to be completely irritatingly irritating. Like, I found them to be completely... Ooh. If I ever came close to dying, it's because of rooms like this. Because it would take about falling off this platform about 5 to 6 times before I mastered this part. And then I would die about 5 to 6 times getting to the second platform before figuring out how to get here, to get here, to get to here. And then I might die about 5 more, not die, but get hit about 5 more times before I figured out how to get here, how to get here, how to dodge this, how to get this, and then how to move that back over here to get out. It is such a trite, but I did them. I did all of the puzzles. I figured them all out. And that's what I have to say, is that even though these types of levels, these types of puzzle layouts, these obstacle courses, and all of these challenges may serve to completely piss you off, you can do them. They are completely doable. If you don't give up and you are tenacious, you will eventually figure out the jumps, you will figure out the timings and the bomb placements, you will memorize how long it takes for a bomb to blow up. You may have to place not 1, but 2 bombs here. You have to learn the placement of the bomb to know how much distance each bomb has to be in order to explode. But their blast radius will be like that, and their blast radius will be like that, so that the bomb can explode to activate the lever, but not explode the other bomb. So you will throw one bomb, wait a second, throw another bomb, so that when the first bomb explodes and activates the lever while you're on it, it's moving over here, but then the second bomb explodes to move the platform back, so that you could line it up to do that, and then you'll have to throw 2 more here to raise the platform, move it back over, and there are a lot of things like this that you're gonna have to all get into your head and accumulate and compartmentalize, time your jumps, and you'll figure it out, but it will be aggravating. You will get aggravated. I got aggravated, but I completed them. But this is just an example of the types of rooms that you're going to encounter. There was one dungeon that I almost gave up on. There is one. And I will show one more, because this one is a complete doozy. Let's say you have a platform with a door over here, and you're standing right here. Like, you're standing on this little platform. This is a little cliff here. There's nothing over here. There's nothing over here. This is where the door where you entered is. And everything over here is lava. You have to go from this door to that door. And there's only lava here, so how do you proceed? Well, there are fireballs that are moving up and down. There's 1 fireball, 2 fireball, 3 fireball, 4 fireball, and 5 fireballs. Now these fireballs are moving up and down, and they're moving up and down really quickly. And you're thinking, how do you pass? You can't necessarily jump on a fireball. You'll take damage. You get jump on fire. Well, you'll have access by this point in the dungeon to an ice staff or an ice wand. The ice wand, you have to stand and line up your shot and fire an ice beam at one of the fireballs to turn it into a block of ice. You could freeze the fireball. And depending upon how high or how low the block of ice is, you'll be able to jump on it. But you are also timed. This will only stay a block of ice for about 2 to 3 seconds. So you have to get onto here, time your shot, freeze this block as well, jump from that block before that block breaks. And then you have to make sure that one gets high enough to go over here to freeze that block up, jump, then you jump onto here, and then while you're waiting, you gotta freeze that block, jump up onto there, and then you gotta wait for this one to go all the way up to here, where it is here, and then you freeze that block, then you jump on here, then you jump from here to go to here. It might look simple. It might look simple, but trust me, I spent an hour here. I spent an hour here. I can't explain enough how irritating this section was. Fireballs, freezing them, standing on them. You get 2 seconds to get to time your jumps, and sometimes it would take 2 seconds just to have this go up to here. You may fail, you may hit it too fast, and it may freeze down here. You can't do that. You have to wait for it to go up all the way here, but you have to also quantify how much time you have to spend on this block to be able to get over here. If you thought that room was irritating, this one is far more irritating. Ooh, this one is probably it was probably my most irritating room in the entire game. But I figured it out, and you're gonna have to go through this room multiple times. So by the end of this, you're probably gonna have it memorized. But maybe you got lucky the first time. Maybe after about an hour, you got lucky and figured it out. But then when you had to come back, it would take you another hour. I'm not gonna say whether that happened or didn't happen to be, but it that's where my love and hate come in for this game. That's where the love and hate come in. This is where the hate is. The hate is in this. But I will say that all of the platforming is skill-based. You will eventually learn it. You will. You may fail dozens and dozens and dozens of times. You may get it on your first time. But eventually, if you're tenacious enough, if you're determined enough, if you're stubborn enough, you will learn the patterns. You will learn how to time your jumps. You will master the room, and you will be able to get through into the next area. And you'll eventually realize that the combat is the easiest part of Alundra. This is the hardest part of Alundra, the platforming. This is where you're going to take the most damage, is falling off this platform into the spike floor, trying to get out of the spike floor, jump, try again. Falling off of this fireball into the lava pit, trying to get out of the lava pit to get back up here to try again. It's a continuous, repeated process, but as you master each timing, you will eventually go from the first fireball to the second one to the third one, and eventually you'll be able to get to the third one easily, and then you have to time it for the fourth one, then you'll get there, and then you'll get to the fifth one, then you'll be able to clear the room, and then master the timing and figure all this stuff out. You'll master how to use the ice wand, you'll master how to use all of that stuff. And the funniest part is, as soon as you finish the volcano dungeon, you will get a pair of boots that make you immune to fire damage when you fall into the lava. You will no longer take fire damage. So this room becomes completely trivial as soon as you pass it for the first time. But you have to pass it for the first time. That's how this game is set up, is that it will trivialize what you went through hell to pass through the first time. So that's your reward for passing through it the first time. You won't really have to worry about it again after you pass through it the first time. Sometimes you do, though. Some puzzles you will have to redo every single time you visit the room, so there's nothing you can do about that. But the more you've mastered the puzzle, then the more times you revisit the room, the less time you'll take each time going through it. Even though I think you shouldn't have to redo it every time, that's just how the game is set up. But I will say that going through these nightmares, going through this, the story of Alundra is worth it. All of the turmoil and anger that you will feel going through this is worth it to get to the end of Alundra's story. It is fantastic. I can't begin to describe how fantastic this story is and how much it is worth going through. You will experience a lot of heartache at the passing of a lot of these NPCs. You will. You'll get to know them. Some of the funniest dialogue may be by them. Like Bon Air, he talks like a surfer dude. I don't know whose idea was that, but he's awesome. He's one of the best characters in the game. When you talk to him, he'll have lots of different dialogue at different points in time. And there are joke lines of dialogue. For example, in the lava dungeon, you'll find a sign at the right before a big lake of lava, and a sign says, "Danger, lava is very hot, only idiots beyond this point." and that was hilarious because because it's obvious you don't want to jump in the lava, only idiots beyond this point. And the Mayor Beaumont, about halfway through the game, he's going to be complaining about everybody dying and all this stuff, and then he'll just randomly say, "Why don't we get basic cable out here?" You're like, what? There's a bunch of random stuff like that peppered into the story, and then you're going to want to talk to everybody at every opportunity you can get, just to be able to catch those random lines of dialogue to see when you're going to get it. It's worth it. It really is. This video is a long one, but I could not condense it any further if I tried. There's just so much to talk about, and I would go off on tangents, so many tangents, just to talk about one dungeon, one level, one room. And it just goes to show you how much these rooms will ingrain themselves into your head. You will memorize them by the end. By the time you've failed so many times, you will memorize a room. And I've memorized these two, just clearly showing you how they look, with my terrible drawing skills. But it will leave an impression, is what I'm trying to say. This game leaves an impression. If you've played the Zelda games, then you know how these puzzles may look. And the later Zelda games have a jumping ability, to my knowledge. I've never played them, so I can't confirm that. This has a Super Nintendo era looking sprite level of graphics, but it is a very vertical type of game. Vertical jumping is very much involved. You're gonna have a time with this. You're gonna get frustrated. You're gonna get elated. You're gonna be challenged mentally and patience-wise. You're gonna be challenged in so many areas. You may come close to giving up many times, but if you persevere and decide to learn the room, or in some cases look up a guide and they'll tell you how the puzzle works, when to do this, how to do that. I had to use a guide to learn about the bomb trick. I was like, how the heck do I do this? Oh, you have to put 2 bombs down, not 1. You had to put 2 in order to get to where you need to do it. So there are a lot of stuff that you gotta keep track of, but you'll get through it. I mean, I did. If I were to rate Alundra with a final score, like with a X out of 10 score, I'd probably give it maybe an 8 out of 10. And that's a personal gripe score, because it loses points for how much I hate these rooms. I hate them. I did them, but I hate them. I completed them. I hate them. I finished them. I hate them. I hate them. I did the puzzles. I figured it out, but I still hate them. I hate them. But if I weren't being personally curmudgeoned about it, I would probably say it's more closer to a 9 out of 10. It's closer to a 9 out of 10 because these are really well-made puzzles, and they're completable, they're doable, but they will challenge you, they will irritate you, but you'll figure them out. I figured them out. I hated them. I despised them. I despised doing them. I told myself I would never come back to this game, and I would never do this puzzle ever again after I figured it out and finished it. And I probably won't ever play Alundra again. because I probably don't need to. I've memorized the story. It's in my head. This experience is the game for me. Experiencing it the first go around, experiencing that story, going on that adventure, even if it's just for one time, it is worth doing. And I can't say any more than that.